Hollywood builds empires on image, but it crumbles on secrets. For over a decade, the world watched the slow-motion collapse of the Jolie-Pitt dynasty, a modern fairy tale that devolved into a bitter, high-stakes war of attrition. At the center of this battlefield stood two young men from Southeast Asia, Maddox, adopted from Cambodia, and Pax Thien, adopted from Vietnam. They did not ask for the flashing lights of the paparazzi. They did not ask to be the faces of a global humanitarian experiment. But when the illusion of the perfect family shattered on a private jet in 2016, these two brothers were forced to make a choice. A choice not just between a mother and a father, but a choice of survival. Today, as the dust settles on one of the most toxic divorces in entertainment history, a striking psychological pattern has emerged. Maddox and Pax Thien have become Angelina Jolie's most fierce defenders, yet their loyalty manifested in two entirely opposite ways. One chose the weapon of absolute silence. The other chose the explosion of public defiance. Two brothers, two different scars, two distinct paths of loyalty. This is not just a story of Hollywood royalty. It is a psychological deconstruction of what happens to children caught in the crossfire of a global media war. To understand the dynamic of the Jolie-Pitt household, one must understand Maddox Jolie-Pitt. He was the catalyst. Before there was Brad Pitt, before there were 5 other siblings, there was only Angelina and Maddox. Adopted in 2002 from an orphanage in Battambang, Cambodia, Maddox didn't just join Angelina's life, he redefined it. He transformed her from Hollywood's wild child into a global humanitarian mother. Because of this unique bond, Maddox was never just a son. He was her original confidant, her anchor. And when the family expanded, he naturally stepped into the role of the protective eldest brother. But leadership in a fractured home carries a heavy psychological toll. In psychology, there is a concept known as parentification, when a child is forced to take on the emotional or functional responsibilities of an adult. As the eldest, Maddox became the silent co-guardian of his siblings' reality. The turning point of the entire Jolie-Pitt saga occurred in September 2016 on a flight from Nice to Los Angeles. While the exact details remain locked in sealed court documents and heavily redacted FBI reports, the core narrative remains clear. A verbal and physical altercation broke out between Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, and it was Maddox who stood up to intervene. It was Maddox who stepped between his parents. When the plane landed, the family was forever altered. The divorce papers were filed days later. In the years that followed, Maddox's response to the trauma was masterful in its restraint. He did not go to the tabloids. He did not post angry tirades on social media. Instead, he chose the ultimate weapon in a high-profile custody battle: institutional silence. When he turned 18, Maddox quietly packed his bags and moved to South Korea to study biochemistry at Yonsei University. When paparazzi cornered him on campus, asking if his relationship with his father was over, his response was chillingly polite, detached and brief. Whatever happens, happens. Behind closed doors, however, his loyalty was absolute. Maddox reportedly testified in the custody dispute, a deposition that sources claimed was not very flattering to Brad. He was the first to legally drop Pitt from his surname in daily life, choosing to be known simply as Maddox Jolie. Maddox's loyalty is structural. He operates like a silent regent, protecting his mother's flank through dignity, education, and behind-the-scenes execution. He doesn't need to shout to make his absence felt in Brad Pitt's life. His silence speaks volumes. If Maddox is the calm before the storm, Pax Thien is the thunder adopted in 2007 from Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. At the age of 3.5, Pax entered a family that was already a roaring media circus. He was described by his parents early on as a wild, energetic, and fiercely independent child. But growing up in the shadow of an older brother who is considered the golden standard of loyalty creates a different kind of psychological pressure. Where Maddox internalized his anger, Pax Thien weaponized his. For years, Pax remained in the background, a brooding presence in paparazzi photos, often hiding his face or looking at the cameras with open hostility. He lacked the calculated restraint of Maddox. Pax was raw. The world learned just how deep that rawness ran on Father's Day. It was an explosion that shook the foundations of the Jolie-Pitt public relations machinery. Through a private Instagram account, which was later verified by major news outlets, Pax unleashed a scathing, unfiltered attack on Brad Pitt. Over an image of Pitt accepting an Oscar, Pax wrote words that would permanently cement the estrangement. "Happy Father's Day to this world-class a whole. You time and time again prove yourself to be a terrible and despicable person." He went further, accusing Pitt of having no consideration or empathy toward his 4 youngest siblings, who tremble in fear when in his presence. He concluded with a devastating promise: "You will never understand the damage you have done to my family because you are incapable of doing so. You have made the lives of those closest to me a constant hell." This was not the calculated legal maneuvering of a Hollywood team. This was the visceral, pent-up rage of a child who felt his family's pain had been minimized by the public's adoration of a movie star father. Psychologists note that in highly dysfunctional family separations, children often split roles. If one becomes the caretaker, Maddox, another often becomes the truth-teller or the rebel, Pax. Pax took it upon himself to burn the bridge completely. He didn't just want to distance himself from Brad Pitt. He wanted to strip away the veneer of the charming Hollywood icon and force the world to see the man he believed his father truly was. Pax's loyalty to Angelina is fierce, protective, and combative. He acts as her shield, willing to get his hands dirty, willing to court controversy just to ensure that his mother's truth is screamed from the rooftops. But as we look at these two paths, Maddox's icy detachment and Pax's fiery rebellion, we must ask the uncomfortable question that Hollywood commentators often whisper but rarely dissect: is this pure loyalty, or is it the result of profound psychological conditioning? Critics of Angelina Jolie have often accused her of alienation, of systematically turning her children against Brad Pitt. They point to the fact that almost all of the children, upon turning 18, have dropped the name Pitt. They point to Pax's post as evidence of a narrative deeply drilled into the household. But to view these young men merely as pawns in their mother's game is to rob them of their agency and underestimate their intelligence. Consider their current adult lives. Neither Maddox nor Pax has fled the nest to escape their mother's orbit. Instead, they have integrated themselves into her professional empire. On the set of Jolie's biographical drama, Maria, and her directorial project, Without Blood, both Maddox and Pax served as crucial crew members. Pax worked closely in the assistant director department, while Maddox coordinated logistics. They have chosen to become her literal workforce, her creative allies. In the cutthroat world of cinema, where trust is a rare commodity, Angelina has built a production team out of the only people she knows will never betray her: her sons. For Maddox and Pax, loyalty to their mother is intertwined with their sense of identity. They were brought into a world of immense wealth but extreme isolation. When your childhood is spent moving between gated compounds across Europe and America, guarded by security teams, the family unit becomes an island. If that island splits, you must choose a side, because neutrality means drowning. Brad Pitt's legal team has spent millions trying to maintain a narrative of a father denied access. But the tragic reality for him is that you cannot legally mandate love from adult sons. Maddox and Pax are no longer minors bound by custody agreements. They are grown men making conscious decisions. Maddox and Pax Thien started life in orphanages in post-war Southeast Asian nations. By a stroke of cosmic fate, they were transported to the absolute pinnacle of Western celebrity culture. They were given everything money could buy, but they were also forced to pay the highest price, the public autopsy of their family. Maddox chose the path of the stoic, protecting his mother through his silence, building his future through intellect, and letting his absence be his ultimate verdict against his father. Pax chose the path of the warrior, confronting the trauma out in the open, sacrificing his own privacy to strike a blow against the man he believed tore his sanctuary apart. Two different personalities, two different responses to the same foundational trauma. As they step into their mid-20s, navigating the complex world of Hollywood filmmaking, they carry the heavy mantle of their past. They are no longer just the adopted sons of Angelina and Brad. They are the architects of their own survival. In the end, the true tragedy of the Jolie-Pitt saga is not the lost love between two movie stars. It is the realization that to survive the fallout, two brothers had to grow up far too fast, choosing sides in a war they never asked to fight, bound forever by a fierce, unyielding loyalty to the mother who saved them, and a shared, irreversible exile from the father they left behind.